Hello, everyone, and welcome to my CSRI presentation. My name is Mala Harry, and I'm a third-year doctoral candidate at the University of Virginia. And today I'm going to discuss the end of the journey, what departing athletes say about their academic experiences. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So a brief presentation overview. I'm going to provide an introduction to exit interviews and surveys in general and within the NCAA, some background literature and the conceptual framework for this research, the methods, findings, and discussions and implications will wrap up this presentation. So some general introduction to EIS, or exit interviews and surveys for short. So EIS literature comes mostly from the business areas and focuses mainly on this discovery and communication ideas. It's defined as an exchange of information between a departing employee and a representative of an organization. And in this case, it's going to be the departing employee is the athlete, and the representative can be an AD, a FAR, an SWA, or another representative, so long as it's not a coach. And the main functions here are diagnosis of an issue, improvement of an issue, separation assistance, moving on post-job, and determination for why that employee is leaving. It's really important to that second bullet there, the importance of who is conducting, and research shows that for people leaving to have a more honest and open communication, it's important that that person conducting the exit interview is a third party, a neutral party, usually outside of the organization is preferred there. And this person should also have some experience conducting exit interviews and surveys. Interestingly, there's no real standard procedures for conducting these instruments, so organizations mimic others they perceive to be doing this correctly, which may or may not be the right path to go down, but that's how EIS is generally done. And then there are a few downfalls, what we call methodological and administrative downfalls here. This can include an inaccurate representation of the departing employee's experiences. That's particularly if that person conducting the EIS is not a neutral party, or that person who's leaving doesn't feel comfortable expressing their true concerns, or the fact that administratively the data collected is often just to check a box and not really used by organizations who do conduct exit interviews and surveys. But despite these downfalls, many fields have adopted exit interviews and surveys, and one of those is the NCAA and its membership. So according to bylaw 6.3 in the NCAA manual, exit interviews are required and have been required since 1991 for member institutions to conduct these with departing athletes who have exhausted their eligibility. And this eligibility exhaustion, it might be particularly important, again, going back to those honesty and open communication, because there's less fear of repercussions for the athlete, and they can express things because they are leaving that institution. However, they still might feel a need to express positivity in these interviews, and that's something that we should keep in mind as well. The exit interviews and surveys should be conducted with each sport, but that sample is determined by the institution and the athletic department. So it could be one men's basketball player, or it could be the three who are graduating and moving on. It just sort of depends on the institution as well. And then again, it's conducted by an AD, a FAR, SWA, or another representative that isn't a coach. So these documents are really unique and provide an opportunity to appreciate athletes' voices and better understand their perceptions about how intercollegiate sports functions. In particular, attention in this research was given to the academic area of athletes' experiences, because scholars have tended to note that education takes a backseat to the college athletics model, so a deeper analysis of their experiences in academics is warranted. Moving into some important background literature here. So entrance to college, some athletes come to college underprepared through this admissions process, and this can lead to some potential issues in academic underperformance and other concerns as well. However, this does not mean that all athletes are specially admitted, or that all athletes are not capable of finding success academically. Many do find success academically and are capable of having some really fruitful educational experiences during their time in college and even at big time athletics programs. Time demands literature, as most of us I'm sure are familiar with, this issue of balancing the dual and competing roles as students and athletes is particularly challenging. The literature notes for athletes at big time institutions are FBS and Power 5 levels in particular, and particularly for revenue generating sports as well. And the NCAA Goals research reports that athletes spend 34 hours a week on athletics and almost 39 hours per week on academics there. Pressures are also important, and a host of scholars have noted the pressures that athletes are under, again, to balance these dual roles. And the pressures stem from a host of areas. And here, this pressure area is focusing on the coach-athlete relationship and what coaches can communicate to their athletes about the importance of sports, social endeavors, and certainly academics. So a coach can signal to the athletes the importance or lack thereof of academic accomplishments, and this can lead athletes to spend more time on sports potentially and less on academics, depending on what is communicated. And of course, we know that these influential members of their athletics community can, of course, influence identity development. Faculty interactions are another component to this literature review here. Relationships with faculty are critical in creating beneficial educational growth experiences for non-athletes and certainly for athletes. However, there has been concerns brought up in the literature about the dumb jock narrative unfairly placed on many collegiate athletes. So this is certainly something to consider when encouraging athletes to interact with faculty. Still, in that NCAA Goals research as well, 66% of athletes report having a strong relationship with at least one faculty member. And finally, to wrap up this area, academic support programs for athletes. Many have noted that these are eligibility centers and not really there to cultivate academic development of athletes. So the exit interviews and surveys ask a lot of questions about these, which I'll get to in a minute, and this will help us better understand athletes' perceptions of these academic development areas. So given this background, the following research questions were created. What academic topics are discussed in these exit interviews and surveys by NCAA Division I institutions? And what do college athletes say about these experiences? With that, there is also a conceptual model applied to this research and these research questions. That was Camo and Harrison's 2011 conceptual model of academic success for student athletes. And most higher education literature and models for understanding students' experiences focus on the traditional student population. And what I think is really important about this piece is this was created and tailored towards specifically college athletes, making it an appropriate framework for this research. You can see here the brackets on the slide as well. And so based on the limitations of exit interviews and surveys and sort of the reflective nature of exit interviews and surveys as athletes are leaving and completing their collegiate careers, this study really focuses on this environment contained on the brackets, within the brackets on the slide. And that includes the social system, academic system, commitments as well. So the social and academic systems are often interplaying with one another and influence each other. So for example, the stringent time demands placed on an athlete by a coach resting from that social system can influence the academic system, the intellectual development, and the grade performance of an athlete, noting that interplay there as well. Additionally, the Scholar Baller program, created by Harrison and Boyd in 2007, can improve the athlete academic success and integration and was designed to assist academic support programs for athletes. So that certainly highlights the importance of those programs in the athlete environment and experience there. And then those systems, the social and academic systems, are areas that are discussed a lot in exit interviews and surveys. And then we can note social integration and academic integration are crucial to producing that column of commitments there, the goal commitment, whatever that goal is, the institutional commitment, and the commitment to their sport. And finally, all those areas, the system and commitments work together to culminate and help explain academic success or failure of our college athletes here. So that wraps up the conceptual model that this literature and research was viewed through. Methods wise, so exit interviews or surveys are kind of rare access to them because it's pretty sensitive information gathered in them. So little is known about these instruments and what is reported within them. So FBS EIS data for this study was gathered through the Intercollegiate, a public service journalism platform that critically examines intercollegiate athletics. They filed formal records requests with every Division I institution subject to public disclosures laws for 2018-2019 years. And this study particularly examined FBS programs as well. So this study had responses from 528 athletes from 17 programs to explore their educational experiences and highlight their voices. 9 of these schools had the athletes fill out the instruments for themselves, like a survey, while the remaining 8 schools had athlete responses recorded by a representative. So we can go back to, again, noting that neutral third party may or not be representative in this sample. 6 programs came from the Power 5, which was roughly 127 athletes in total, and the anonymity of the participants was maintained by the schools in the intercollegiate athletics through the redactions and things like that were on the documents, and also the researcher. I don't disclose what level these athletes are playing at. I often don't know their sport either, so just to maintain and further protect the athletes and their voices. The exit interviews and surveys in this sample had a host of different style of questions, Likert scale, yes, no, closed-ended, open-ended questions, and many different topics as well, which we'll get to in a second. Additionally, some institutions provided true exit interview and survey data, and others just offered their questions in blank forms without any athlete responses. Of course, those are not included because we cannot understand athletes' experiences without their voices. Similarly, some other schools offered end-of-season interviews and surveys, and those also were not included because these instruments are different, and also the athletes do have to return if it's an end-of-season interview for the next season and might not be expressing their true feelings to the representative or within those documents. So, as I mentioned earlier, 121 institutions complied with the request, but only 63 offered athlete responses, and of those 17 were in the FBS, and that's how I came to this sample as well. And there are some limitations to this research. Internal validity was not addressed by myself or the Intercollegiate Athletics, and we also rest on this assumption that the athletes and or the representatives did answer the questions honestly and portrayed the athletes' feelings honestly as well. However, this information is publicly available, which is important and can help enhance the transparency and credibility of the data obtained. Furthering the methods, so thematic and deductive document analysis was done based on Comeau and Harrison's conceptual model. Descriptive first cycle coding led to second cycle pattern coding and document analysis there. And again, given the importance of academics and the criticism of athletics enterprise failing to educate athletes, the emphasis is on the student component and that academic experience. And again, the focus here was on the FBS level, as it is considered the most elite athletic level for athletic acclaim reasons, revenue generation, and things like that. And also because academic concerns of athletes tend to be most heightened in this most elite level. And then analysis resulted in the following major themes here: overall academic experiences, academic support services for athletes, coaches, head coaches' support of academics, interactions with faculty, and time demand. So I also want to express that it's important to note that not all athletes were asked the same questions because there is no uniform document in this process provided by the NCAA to their membership institutions. So, and not all athletes discussed the same topic. So you'll see some different numbers from that 528 that were included in this sample here. So, moving to results. So some research question 1 findings. So what academic topics are discussed in exit interviews and surveys with our athletes. Most common was academic services, and this was followed by the general academic experiences, time demands, coaches, academic support, faculty support, and other areas. So some subtopics that were included in academic services included like the quality of their academic advisor, experiences with tutoring and their study hall, and ways to improve the resources provided to the athletes. Questions in this area also tended to be open-ended to allow for allowing their athletes to elaborate on the responses. So for example, and others use more closed-ended Likert style questions. So on a scale of 1 to 10, rate your experience with your advisor. Research question 2, what do college athletes say about their academic experiences? And you can see here, of the 144 athletes who answered questions about this topic, 96% or 138 expressed having a good or overall excellent academic experience there. You can see that in that far column there. So of the entire sample, 528 athletes, 437, roughly 83% answered questions about academic support programs. Again, that was the most popular area of academics that was addressed in this research. And almost 99% of athletes found their academic support services to be of good or excellent quality, which is pretty impressive. Academic support from head coaches and faculty was also largely discussed throughout this sample of exit interviews and surveys and the expressions of our athletes. And of the athletes who discussed this topic, 80% believe that their head coaches offered good or excellent support of their educational pursuits. And some athletes even noted that their coaches would let them leave early for practice or skip weekend competitions to keep grades up. Now, we know that might be particularly uncommon for certain sports. And again, the sports of many of these athletes is unknown to protect anonymity and was redacted by the school or the intercollegiate. And then additionally, roughly 80% of athletes asked about faculty support found professors to be helpful and positive during their academic careers. And then finally, time demands. Athletes were frequently asked about time demands. The most common question in this category involved whether athletes missed practice or missed class for practices and competitions. And 85% of the athletes, this is not denoted on that table, but 85% of the athletes explicitly stated that they had not missed class for practice or competitions. And then you can go through this table here and note that many said that their time demands were excellent, good, or they didn't really have issues. However, a few did mention that they struggled to balance these time demands, and these demands hindered their ability to enroll in classes and potentially even select majors and areas of study that they wanted to explore further. So, moving right along. So it's just some concepts and quotes that reflect the concept. So first quote, for overall academic experience, I love the school and its traditions as a student. The classes are difficult, but to say I got a degree from here is really exciting. Quote 2, to reflect academic support services, this environment is hands down the most supportive environment I have ever been in. And quote 3, to reflect a more negative expression of the academic support, advisors are just putting athletes in classes to stay eligible, which again has been noted through the literature as a potential concern of academic support programs. Quote 4, for coach support of academics, coaches in our program were very understanding when it came to classes in school and want us to be the best students we can be. Quote 5, for faculty support, I have relationships with professors that will last forever. 6, for time demands were really good. A lot of time for practice is sufficient and class always comes first. And finally, a more negative expression of time demands. I was not prepared enough for how difficult the time expectations of being a student athlete were going to be. I do not know, though, if there is any amount of teaching or preparation that can get you ready for that. So, brief discussion of research question 1. So the topics and design of exit interviews and surveys really demonstrate where athletic departments place their attention and what they deem important in the athletes' lives. So of the questions asked by these 17 schools in this sample, only 14% of those questions were academics. So this might suggest that schools don't consider academics to be a really critical component to athletes' college experiences, which sort of takes away from that student-athlete terminology that is so commonly used by the membership in the NCAA. And this also supports prior scholarship, noting an emphasis on commercialization, revenue generation, and athletics over educational experiences as well. More questions, if we're going to be using the term student athlete, should be asked about this role that is supposed to be at least half of what an athlete is during their time in college. Most common topic pertain to academic support services, which makes sense as schools continue to allot more money to athlete support services in general. Additionally, some recent academic athletic scandals may demonstrate a need to pay closer attention to these programs and understand the athletes' experiences while they use these resources and services as well. Overall, the academic experiences and time demands questions tended to be open-ended and allowed respondents to expand on their answers and their experiences. And then moving on to coach and faculty support. Athletes are often dependent on their coaches for guidance because they are really key information holders in their social systems, and this can further influence their social and academic integration, the commitments of that Comeau and Harrison model, and therefore their academic success and failures. Due to the significance of the athlete-coach and athlete-faculty relationships in developing college, more understanding of these dyads can be garnered from exit interviews and surveys if the questions are asked and structured appropriately. And oftentimes, questions asked about coaches' academic support were not open-ended. So a suggestion might be to have more open-ended questions for athletes to better express their experiences with their coaches. So one institution asked athletes to please rate the following areas as they relate to your sport, and then coach's support of academics. And this was a closed-ended Likert-style question that didn't allow athletes to expand upon their experiences. And 2 athletes from this university rated their coach as below average, but they were unable to give more feedback as to why they felt this way or how the coach could have been more supportive of their academic endeavors. And because the athletes could not provide more information, the athletic department has 2 options: to do more work later to figure out how the coach was lacking in academic support, or to not do anything about these results and forego developing the coach further and improving the experiences of future athletes with that coach. So some implications for research question 1. A uniform exit interview and survey instrument and process might be beneficial for the NCAA and the membership. Allows for more in-depth and accurate comparisons between athlete experiences, and comparison could ensure that there's more equitable experiences for our athletes across Division I. However, institutions should still have some freedom and autonomy to ask some institution-specific questions as well. Athletes should be encouraged, again, to complete the exit interview and survey instruments by themselves rather than being performed by a representative. Again, the importance of power dynamics that was expressed and earlier in this presentation about the having a neutral third party so that athletes or departing employees can truly express their feelings and really make a difference for the next round of employees or students or athletes. More questions about topics that are prominent in the literature. Not many institutions asked questions about major clustering and steering, which we know from previous studies are an issue in big-time athletics programs. So not inquiring about these areas might demonstrate that institutions do not care or do not want to know about those experiences or if those are happening. And then finally, making exit interview and survey data available to researchers and still abiding by privacy laws would enable us to better understand the athlete experience and hopefully make some improvements. So finally, the discussion and implications of research question 2. So much of this research challenges the current negative light on athletes' overall academic experiences. If academics was to take a back seat, as many scholars have asserted, we would expect athletes to have expressed more dissatisfaction with their academic experience. However, this was really not the case with this sample of athletes in this research here. So many of the athletes expressed feelings of strong social and academic integration, harkening back to that Comeau and Harrison model as well. Athletes found value in academic support service, which may counter some previous literature. Many claimed that these people were lifesavers and some of the most supportive members in their communities as well. Around 90% of the athletes found positive experiences with their head coach academic support, which again does offer a different insight into the athlete experience compared to some previous work. Most noted professors were helpful and understanding regarding their schedules and time demands. There was no mention of stereotypes, experiencing stereotypes from the faculty. However, we should continue to have education for our faculty on how to effectively work with this unique population to support and challenge our athletes further. In responses from time demands, questions also challenge some of the current narrative that athletes are overburdened by their dual roles as students and athletes. Being an instructor at a big time institution, I know my athletes do have some struggles with their time demands. However, the athletes in this sample did not express these concerns as loudly, perhaps, as other athletes have. Only 5 and 6% found their time demands to be poor or struggled to find a balance, respectively. And many emphasize the importance of that this is an opportunity to learn time management and other life skills, and that this is just really one component of being a college athlete, and it just comes with the territory. However, I do want to provide a note of caution as I in this presentation that the positivity expressed by these athletes should be read with caution. Athletes might not know anything different, and this sample is not meant to be generalizable to the academic experiences of all college athletes. So here are the references I use throughout, and I just wanted to say thank you for attending this presentation, and I hope y'all found some interesting takeaways as we seek to better understand and improve the experiences of our athletes in big time athletics programs, particularly with education. So thank you so much, and please reach out if you have any thoughts or comments.